I'm here with Alan Sides of Oceanway loudspeakers and recording studios and so on. You probably own some of his records that he's made. Alan, could you tell us what you're showing at CES 2012 this year?
Well, we're showing two sets of speakers. We're showing our new small speaker, which we call the AS1, which is the speaker right here. And of course, you want to take a look over there and see what the components look like. And we tried to find something that was, a little bit more modest physically, but still meet the dynamic range demands that we want and be able to go flat at 25 hertz and be able to deliver, pretty much tremendous transients and impact in a small package. And this is our HR3 system, which basically looks like has a similar sort of subbase. It has twin 12s. Each 12 has a huge magnetic structure, about 14,000 Gauss. They're aluminum voice coils, and the cones can move 2 inches.
Wow.
In either direction. So this system goes basically flat to 18 hertz. No runoff at all, really.
Wow.
And even the small speaker, if you're looking at the frequency response at, say 25, 30 through 40, is basically all sitting about plus 1.5 in reference to 100. So it's not rolling off at all. Actually, so most small speakers of this size, well, mid-sized speakers we'll say, typically information below 50 hertz is pretty negligible. And also information with the capacity to deliver staggering dynamic range. So these speakers can deliver, you can be sitting there at 85 or 95 dB and a transient comes across 110, it's no problem.
Wow. And what kind of sensitivity do these speakers have?
It's hard to, like on this system here, because it's a Triumph system, you have to look at each range separately.
Okay.
And it's fair to say that if you want the kind of impact and you want the kind of subharmonics that I'm looking for, it requires a fair amount of current. It requires quite a bit of power. You're not going to get away with a 30-watt trial. If you're happy with the bass down to 80 hertz, then you can get plenty of level. But if you want to go all the way down and you want it to be tight and defined, and you want it to be really shocking, it requires current, power, and drive. And that's just the way it is.
Right. And
we run about 350 watts a side on the small speakers, and that's plenty. I mean, you could probably get away with 350 watts, but I would say 350 is closer. And we're using, the viola amps we're using are about as high-fi as you can get. They are pretty stunning quality-wise. So that combination with this speaker is pretty fun to listen to.
I agree. I love the demonstrations that you've given. Do you offer any other products that aren't here?
We do. We have this is our sort of I guess you'd call the HR3 as our mid-size speaker. We have our HR2, which is the next one up physically, which is quite a departure, in its design. But basically, they're all symmetrical sonically, I would say. You heard our smallest speaker,
yeah,
and it's right in there with our other speakers. And I guess maybe it's because. I'm a musician, I'm a bass player, I'm a recording engineer, and I probably recorded 500 albums, but I worked on 1,000 albums, and so I take a little bit different approach in designing speakers because I need to hear something that's not a hype. I hear something that's very accurate, but I also listen for long periods of time. It can't be harsh. The other thing I need is very, very wide dispersion. I need a speaker that I can have 3, 4, 5 people standing behind me, and they're hearing the same thing I'm hearing. I don't want to have to set a sweet spot.
Right, everybody fighting for that one spot in the studio.
And that's a problem. A lot of small speakers, even domes where you'd say, well, isn't the dispersion a half circle because it's a dome? But that's not really true. If you measure the response on axis 0, and you go 30 degrees off axis on most domes, you get not only a different response, but quite a different level. If you take our system, this HR3, you can go 0 on axis, and you can go 40 degrees off 0 and lay the plot. It's exactly the same plot as 0. So you get very wide dispersion. And when you have very wide open dispersion, the horns tend to not sound like horns. Like you take a look at a conical horn, and where you end up having fairly narrow dispersion, where it kind of sounds like this.
Right.
As you get wider and wider and wider dispersion, it can sound more and more open. And so that's where in our smallest speaker we're using a waveguide. And, we didn't originate. It's been around for a lot of years, but it's a way to get 3 dB more efficiency out of a dome. And if the waveguide's fast enough, it has virtually no sound. The other thing we did, we ended up making our waveguide of a solid piece of walnut. We tried all kinds of surfaces and materials. And the funny thing is, changing the materials has really almost negligible effect in the measurement of response, but in the actual listening to it, it's a big difference.
That's interesting.
And so we ended up with this solid wood waveguide, and it sounded delicious. It
Did
sounded
something
really good.
lead you to that thought? Because it seems like metal and plastic seem to be the most
Right.
popular.
It's something I just started trying. We tried about 5 or 6 different materials and listened to all of them. And the funny thing is, assuming they were symmetrical and matching, I found virtually negligible difference in actual measuring the response. But yet, they all sounded quite different sonically.
Wow.
So how you define that in quantitative terms? Because I'm an end result guy. I'm a little more concerned about what the end product is. And I'm an audiophile in the respect that I want the end product to be incredibly natural, but I'm not necessarily taken by having the process. I'll do whatever it takes to get the end result. You know.
You mean in terms of uncovering whatever you need?
Whatever it takes. Also, sometimes you'll find a component that maybe is very, very good at a certain range, but not extended here and not extended there. But what it does in that range is spectacular. So it might be dismissed out of hand because it doesn't do everything at a certain range. But I can say, I can take this component, I can use it in this space, and it does exactly what I need it to do, and it's stellar. So I think it's just never ruling anything out. There's always, keep your options open. And the other thing I find is that there's no one way to do anything.
In the hi-fi world, I've been in this business for about 40 years, and it does seem as though a lot of people do not know the name Ocean Way.
Yeah.
What do you have to say about that?
I would say, we're relatively new to the audiophile community. The records I've done, like 88 Basis Recount Basie, I've done tons of audiophile records over the years, latitude tracks, directed discs. So I think people would know Ocean Way because our, albums recorded in our studios in Hollywood have sold in excess of 1 billion copies. So I think we have some level of notoriety on that. We've done. It's funny, in our actual rooms in Hollywood, Sinatra recorded, it was a very good year, in our rooms, But we recorded, the Barbra Streisand Broadway record, and Unforgettable with Natalie Cole, and Genius Loves Company with Ray Charles, and Radiohead Hail to the Thief, and Green Day American Idiot, and 50 Cent, in the club, Dr. Dre, Eminem.
Too bad you don't have any variety at all.
Our studio is unique because I say one day it's Andre Previn doing a classical piece, the next day it's 50 Cent. So that's a real mix. And so we're mixing Avatar, or we're mixing Planet of the Apes, or we're mixing a major motion picture.
And your loudspeakers allow everybody that works at your studio to feel that they're able to do their work extremely well.
We think so, because the one thing about what we're looking for is we're not looking for a hype. We're looking for something that's starkly realistic. And so as an engineer, what I want to do is I want to create dramatic, a lifelike presentation. And in certain respects, I want it bigger. Very nice to meet you.
Thank you,
I'm
sir.
so glad that you enjoyed the speakers.
Thank you for your time, Alan.
Okay.